Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Got Java, Got Game Controllers Get Greenfoot session with Stephanie Hoeppner. Stephanie has taught computer science for 14 years. She serves as an assistant technology coordinator in the state of Ohio. She's the current vice president of the Ohio CSTA chapter and our newly elected CSTA board member. She works on professional development and advocacy for CS in the state of Ohio. Please welcome Stephanie.
Good morning. I put my information up here because I did not have a PowerPoint, as probably many of you noticed. Sometimes they're uploaded beforehand because this really isn't a PowerPoint presentation. I will be going through 3 different peripherals that I use with Greenfoot, so it's more of a show and tell. There will be a couple of things that I will be able to zip up and put up on my website later. One thing about my website is I haven't touched it in like 3 months since, well, maybe since the end of school. So just be aware there are a few things out of date, but I'm going to be updating some things, and I will put some of the zip files out on that probably in the next couple of weeks. So that'll be the easiest way for you to get information. You are welcome to email me at any time. I can't guarantee an immediate response, but within a couple of days, I should be able to at least get back to you with some type of information. So I am from Ohio, and I am very active in a lot of things that we do in Ohio with CSTA. So if you have any questions or are near me, anything related to that, you're welcome to get a hold of me for that as well. So how many of you are familiar with Greenfoot? Okay, good. That helps. How many of you are familiar with Java programming? Okay, good. Then I won't go through too much of this. That helps with what we're doing. I use Greenfoot in 2 different classes. I use it in my introductory class. It's a semester class. I start with Alice because the students have never seen programming. And we learn of course we do the drag and drop, and then I switch to Greenfoot so that they can still see things on the screen, but then I relate it with, the rabbit moved or walked, and now we actually have to write the word move, and we do some things of that nature. So I lead them into Java in that way. Then I have a Programming 2 course, which we use with Java, in which we use these devices. So a lot of what I'll be talking about today has to do with my second programming class. Much of the resources, the introductory resources for these, can be found on the Greenfoot website. I'll show you where that is, just in case you're not familiar with the website. If you go to documentation, there is inference down here with the going further. And you can see there's the Kinect with Greenfoot, which we'll be talking about, the Finch with Greenfoot, which we'll be doing, and over there on the far right at the top, gamepads with Greenfoot. So that is where, if I say that this is one of the demo programs, that is where all of it can be obtained from the Greenfoot website. All right, let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to talk about are the gamepads. You can use different gamepads. It does not require that you use one type or another. We have, because I do a game design course with XNA, we already have the Xbox 360 controllers, so I just use those. But you can use PlayStation and some other controllers as well. This is, of course, one of the regular Microsoft controllers, but for those of you in school districts like mine where we do not have as much money, I have found generic controllers that work, and I can let you know where that is, and these are $15 to $17, and they work just the same as the Xbox 360. So if you have limited funds, you still can, purchase some game controllers. So don't let that stop you from doing this. So my students who start in this class, we've talked about they understand the fundamentals of Java. They understand the fundamentals of different types of structures, data structures. Of course, they know things like looping and if statements. So I can go a little bit further with them with this type of information. The first thing that we start with is one of these demos. And basically what this allows them to do is play with the controller and see what happens when they press the different buttons. It also helps if the controllers are different, they can see what buttons do what. Because as you can see, this picture is not an Xbox controller. So if I run this, and I can, you can see that, you can see that the D-pad. And by the way, I did not grow up gaming, so when some of my kids are like, oh, it's not doing the D-pad, I'm going, what's the D-pad? I'm like, are you talking about? So I am a little bit ignorant with all the different terminology. I did not have any of this when I grew up. So they can kind of get an idea of what is where. They can see, they also can redefine. If they don't like the way a button is, they can click redefine, and you can answer yes. And then it tells you to press the action up button, so whatever you want it to be, it can be whatever you want. You should see how they redesign their controllers. And then as you start hitting the buttons, it will actually save which button you're doing for which. So we just kind of play with it to begin with, to start with this. And actually, you can skip through them, you can pause. And then we just start, we actually do look at the code. We talk about, let's look at what the different controllers look like. And then we start talking about the classes down. We start talking about the gamepad class. And well, let's look at the controls. What can we do? Thought I turned it off, maybe I didn't. Why isn't it letting me get out? Why can't I pause? There we go. And so we go and we look at, and like I said, because my students are used to this format, we start talking about the methods, the summaries, what we can do. You know, we start talking about that we can check and see which button is down, which axis they've used. We can get the gamepad so that they can use it. So we start looking at what they've done. And we kind of use this as a starting point for the controllers and how to use them within Greenfoot. And then we move on to, I always, and there are arguments of whether this is good or bad. I always show my students something low level, and then we kind of look at something that's a little high level so they can see where they can start and where they can go to depending on what they want to do. So one of the, there's two other games that you can get. You get Pac-Man and you get this zombie game. And the zombie game, lots of my students like it. I don't particularly play it very well. But we talk about some of the classes, we look at how some of this is done. And so I prefer to give them some examples. I prefer to talk about how somebody else did something, and then we start back and we build our own programs. So, and basically, and you shoot the zombies, and I've forgotten how I shoot. There we go. See, I told you I can't do this. Oh, there's one. By the way, I die very quickly when I do this. Because I'm like, oh, wait, yeah, see? When you grow up in a house that isn't allowed to have games and stuff, you know, you're not very good at this. So anyway, so then they get very excited because they're like, ooh, I can do all kinds of things. And then everybody loves Pac-Man. So just so you can see what your examples are that you can use, I will briefly show you Pac-Man. But I am beginning, what's very interesting, I think, with the generational gap to some extent is that everybody has a different vision of what Pac-Man is. I still, when I think about Pac-Man, I think about the arcade and yeah, okay. That's not what they do. So anyway, so you can actually play Pac-Man, and I don't know if you can really hear it, but okay. All right. Seriously? There we go. I haven't practiced. I did. I practiced. I'm like, I'm going to have to demo this. I should be able to play this a little bit better. At some point, Normally, because I've had the students before, oops, I just went through a wall. Okay, I shouldn't have done that. I messed with the code. I really shouldn't have gone through a wall. Ooh, look, I can cheat. Maybe I should not have used my demo code. So these are, it gets the kids excited. They look at what they can do, and then we go back and we start doing some of our own programs. And one of the first programs, how many of you have done Little Crab? The Little Crab example program with Greenfoot. Okay. So since I use that in my introductory class, we go back to, let me go back up here. We go back to the Little Crab, which by this point the kids are not thrilled with, but because they're all like, we did that last year or last semester. But what we do is I go back and I say, okay, well, let's think about how do you add in peripherals? Because a lot of the kids have written games. And we talk about systematically, what do you go to change? What do you have to think about? What methods are going to be affected? And then where do you put this information in? So what I have them do, there is a gamepad template class that you download that basically just sets up so you could build a game in it. And we talk about how you could add that into an existing program. So we copy those classes. We put them in this folder, which I can show you the folder. And you can see that we have a gamepad and a direction class down there. And we talk about, okay, well, let's have the crab move with the controller now instead of using the arrow keys, because that's typically what you do when you start that tutorial. And you also then, depending on how far you want to extend this, you can have them work in pairs, and you can have them plug in another controller, so you can get the gamepad and name it pad 2. And then you can have them control the lobster, and it becomes a 2-person game with the game controllers. So you have an option like that. So what I've done, for those of you that are familiar with crab, is that in here, instead of having the move, everybody writes move. Also, were any of you in the Greenfoot workshop yesterday? Okay. Those of you in the Greenfoot work yesterday, you saw the crab example with just the actor class. I have an old version, and I actually have over here, under actor, I have an animal class. So my move is a little bit different. So there's a couple of different methods that are a little different. So please don't be confused if you saw that yesterday. Let me go back to crab. So instead of doing the regular move, we write this move with gamepad just to get started, and we talk about those methods that we saw, and we just do a really simple if statement. So the coding for using the controllers is not difficult coding, but the result you get from the excitement of the students far outweighs the ease of the code. So you can see here that basically up at the top, if you haven't used a gamepad before, you basically are going to create a variable. If you're going to do 2, pad 1, pad 2, obviously. And I get the gamepad that's attached. And then as I come further down, just if pad is down, the gamepad button action right. So these are my action buttons over here. So if my action right button is down, I'm going to have it turn 15. If it's left, I'm going to have it turn left counterclockwise 15. And then I kind of let them decide what they want to do. And what happens is if I hit the down, it's actually going to jump, because we're just going to set the location to 5 down. I'm sorry, up, 5 up. And if we hit the down, then we are adding 5 to the y to get it to go down. So this results in very quickly changing their mind about the fact that we did Little Crab in a different class. Okay, so I can turn him, I can jump. Oh, and I can still get eaten. See how well I play games? So that's where I start with this. And then I don't use this to start every program. We have them, they do their own programs. We've had them write little Frogger programs where the frog, has to cross the road, things like that. And they don't start with the controller, because again, part of what I'm trying to teach them is thinking about how you set up a game. So after they've completed a game, so they never know when we're going to use the game controllers, but I will periodically pick a game and I will say, okay, now that you're finished with that, resave that game in a separate folder, and I want you to make one or two of the characters, either a two-person game or single-person controller, and change something to be manipulated with the gamepad. So they look at it from the standpoint of it's also a design. You know, here I've created this game for the keyboard or stuff. What if I wanted it to be portable? What if I wanted to put it on a game system? How would I go about adding in the gamepad? So that is what I do with my gamepads. Okay, I am doing well on time. I have a couple of different things, so I will do some questions toward the end because I do want to make sure we get to look at all three of the different devices and how I use them. So that's the beginning of the gamepads. All right, the next thing I want to move to is the Finch. And the Finch, if some of you may have been in that session yesterday as well, but it is a cute little robot. I love these things. I use them in other things just besides Greenfoot, actually in a really low-level introductory course of just what computing is. We use the Finch, and we actually use it with Alice Dreams, which is the Finch version of Alice. So we do several different things with our Finch. But in Greenfoot, you kind of get a little bit more control. You also you can manipulate the Finch with your other devices. I do not have an example program today with moving the Finch with the game controller. You can do that. But I do have an example after we do the Kinect. You'll see how you can manipulate the Finch with the Kinect system. And that's kind of putting everything together toward the end of the class. So you download the Finch documents on the Greenfoot website. And basically, it's just a class that's added in so that you can manipulate the item. Let me move out some of my items. Okay, how many of you have seen the Finch before? Okay, a few of you? All right, let me... I'll start with the demo so that you can... This demo program is one of the things that you've downloaded if you've gone to the website. And basically, this is going to allow you to see what the Finch can do. So I'm going to set this on the table. I'm going to move the Kinect sensor. And basically, I'll let the kids play with this for a little bit to get used to how to actually move the Finch and manipulate it. All right, so at this point, I can, with my arrow keys, I can easily do, which again, this is an easy conversation with, okay, I just used the 4 arrows to manipulate him. How hard would it be to drop our game controller code in order to manipulate, or for the gamepads to manipulate the Finch instead? And if you do that and you allow multiple students to have gamepads to have the Finches, it does have a nice long wire, but it is long enough that they can have Finch wars. So just be careful. Be careful what you wish for. Because when they've got gamepads and it's controlling a robot, it gets to be a very interesting classroom. Some of the other things that you can see, this really kind of demonstrates all of the different items with the, can I get it? I am covering up one of the sensors and see how the red. I'm covering up the other one. This is the red. I don't know that, I'll see if I can hold this near my mic. You can hear the buzz. I don't think, can you guys hear it? So it does make noise. I can also, his nose turns colors. I can make it be green. I can make it be blue. Also, the acceleration, you can see what XY axis it's turning on. See how I can change the... And this is sort of registering the temperature in the room. I haven't really tested that out, but it's pretty cold in here, and that looks like it's pretty cold on there, so must be doing pretty good. So we learn about the Finch to begin with. If they haven't taken that other course, they at least see what the capabilities are. Again, I start with this because then we go through, we look at the code, we talk about how we're accessing the different parts of the Finch, what we can do with it. Since we do gamepads first, obviously they immediately think they, like I said, Finch wars. You do need to make sure they don't try to destroy them. They're actually really heavy duty. I've not had any of them broken. I've had Finches for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years maybe. How long have they been out, Tom? Two. I had an earlier one, so maybe I've had them for 3 years then. So these are really heavy duty. The wires are heavy duty. I've had no problems with any of them, and I've used them in several classes. So you don't have to worry too much about them if they do get a little crazy with them. So you can start with that. You can look at what you can do with the code. I can look at the up arrow, and I can see how I can actually control it. We can see what happens with the rotation and the image. We can see that what's going to happen, and that's not really what I want to show. I'm in the wrong spot. But and then we talk about where we could drop in the other code, and then I let them copy this in their own version, and so they can call it Finch demo, Joe, and then they can kind of manipulate it how they want. I also have found they get very attached to their Finches, and some of them are different colors, but I have several that are the same, so they've started putting numbers on them, and then they name their Finches, because they have to have number 7. They're no different, but. High school. I teach 9 to 12. In my programming classes, I really do get a mixture. So I would say that I'm more sophomore, junior heavy, in this class, but it does range. If I get a freshman, it's a second semester freshman in this course.
How many Finches do you have?
I actually have 7 right now. So I do break them into groups for this. So normally there's 2 to 3 students per Finch. Because again, with my budget, I've been buying 2 Finches or 2 or 3 Finches each year because I don't get very much money. But I'm slowly building up my flock of Finches, I guess. Yeah, the max I can have in my classroom is 25. So there is also a Finch starter class that you get, just like you would get a starter for the other one. The nice part about the Greenfoot team, as well as they've worked with Tom for the Finch and stuff, is that you do get these starter classes, so you can just start from scratch. Here's my Finch, here's the code, and you can start a program from scratch with this. Okay? So I am going to actually move on to the Kinect because I really want to show you how to move the Kinect and the Finch together. So we will come back to the Finch. All right, and then we have the Kinect sensor. And the Kinect is something that I have been playing with for a couple of years. I started just playing with it with the kids to see what we could do with it. And in the beginning, what I did is on some random days, like the day before Christmas break, or before a spring break or something like that, when some kids are missing and half the class is crazy, we would kind of test out some of these programs, and we'd look at it, and we'd see what we could do with it. And I have some very creative children, and I'm going to, have any of you seen some of the Kinect demos before with the Greenfoot? Any of you? Couple? Okay. All right, well, this painting demo is one of the first demos, and I need 2 volunteers. Corinne, thank you for volunteering, and you, sir. No, this is the painting. Okay? All right, I'm going to attempt to get this. What you're going to end up doing is it'll ask you, you kind of have to be, Jerry, you might be, don't. You'll be fine. No, you don't have to move. I just want you to know they may have to stand a little bit in front of you. Okay, all right. So that I can get this. Let me see. And let me make sure I have the Kinect sensor. I don't think I started the Kinect sensor. It's important to, what you do need to know when you install the Kinect, there is a Kinect sensor you download, and you do have to have that starting to begin with. And you can see there's a little Greenfoot running down in the right-hand side of my computer, and it says Greenfoot Kinect server. You do need to make sure that's running in order to do these programs. There are step-by-step instructions on the website that are great. All right, so you guys are going to have to, let me compile it again. Okay, raise your hands up so that the Kinect can see you guys. See if it grabs you. Okay. Okay. Let me put it this way. Oh, there we go. Oh, it only grabbed one of you. All right, put your, oh, it got both of you. Okay, put your left hand down. Put your left hand down, both of you, and then you can paint. And you can paint each other. You can paint. Oh, look, straight for the alphabet. Look at that. You try to, number 4. Oh, it's a 4. I was thinking you were trying to draw. I thought you were trying to draw an A, but, which is, all right, if you put your left hand up, it clears the screen. So one of you can put up, and then you have to start over. You can if you redesign the program. Okay, so here's what my students did. I did this for a first example, and of course they're starting to paint. Then they start painting each other. Then somebody's doing something elaborate. And the other person will raise their left hand and erase it. So then we had a competition. Yeah, see? So what happened is my students then had a competition of who could write their name the best. And someone would sit and they would hit the pause, because if you, I'm going to hit the pause for a second. If you hit pause, you can actually move your hand without it painting, and then they'd go, okay. And then I would put run, and they would start painting again, and we'd take screenshots of how they wrote their name. And then we looked at all the screenshots, and we voted who wrote their name best. You can argue that this really doesn't have anything to do with programming. However, on the day before a break, this is still technology use, you know, and I didn't pop in a DVD to entertain them. Yeah, okay. All right.
Can you change colors?
You can change colors. You can do that in the code. So we do get that, and so then they start. So, do you want to try to write something?
Yes. Sorry.
I can hit pause.
I don't want to erase it.
Okay. All right. Pause. Okay, I've got the pause. Are you ready for me? Okay. There's. Tell me when I hit pause.
Okay.
You want me to hit pause?
Well, no, not for him. I'm trying to write Greenfoot.
All right. So So at this point, when you hit pause, I can just do a, a print screen. Thank you. Let's give our volunteers a round of applause. So I could hit screenshot, and we could save the word cool. We can do things like that. I also had 2 students who, this will recognize other things besides people, per se. If I find the picture, I was desperately searching for the picture, and I unfortunately think it's at school. I had 2 students who changed the way that they altered the program a little bit. And so when the Kinect sensor came on, they actually had grabbed an umbrella. No, this is not it. It's the balls. I have to get to the ball program. So they did their names with this, and we did that competition. Then the next thing we did, which again, this is another point. They start having fun with this, and they're like, how do I change the color? I don't want to paint in green. I don't want to paint in red. I don't want to paint in blue. And so you can start talking about that. You can also talk about, if you haven't, you can talk about RGB colors. They can make their own color they want to paint with. So you can do quite a few extensions with this. This is actually the program I used to do the extension to move the Finch. All right, where's the balls? Okay, so this one is kind of fun. I need a different volunteer. Someone else? Oh, come on, this doesn't hurt. Oh, come on up. All right, what is going to happen are balls are going to drop from the sky, and you just kind of have to hold your arms, and you have to catch them once it recognizes you. Okay, so put your arm. Oh, it ripped. So you can catch. Wait. Yeah, you're catching them. And they do start to build up. So they start to build up, and then you can, if you like let one of your arms down, you can actually see how many you've, because you can see they all piled up. All right, so this program, what my students did is they decided they didn't want balls to fall. So you may go if you would like. Or oh, look, it's catching other people. You can catch them on your seat, see? So I'll pause this, and we can see your lovely freeze frame. What my students did with this, because again, they were all in this competitive mode, is they started altering what was falling and what they could do with it. And so one of the girls, have you heard that song, It's Raining Men? Okay, so I happen to have an umbrella. I had an umbrella in my classroom. So 2 students, they got the umbrella, and then they changed the objects to little tiny men in business suits. And they added in sound. And so when they played their thing, they stood there with their umbrella, and the little men were coming down, and they would pile up on the umbrella while the song was playing. And of course, I have a screenshot of that, and that's what I was desperately trying to find the past few days, and I think I left the flash drive at home. So I apologize, but I will get that. I will put that on my website with the stuff so you can see it. And the students were over 18, and they're fine with their image being represented, so there's no concern. So anyway, so there is, like I said, to get the kids interested, I use this kind of as a toy. I mean, and sometimes we do that to pique their interest, but then automatically they start doing things like, well, I don't want to catch balls. Well, what else can I do? Can I add other items? Because that was the first thing. They're like, well, it can see me. Can it see other stuff? I said, sure. So, they were trying file folders. They were doing, and then they had a chair, and so they start thinking about what can I do to this program that already exists. There are some other, there are quite a few examples with the Kinect that you can use. There's a depth, so it does shades of gray, so you can see kind of how close it is to the Kinect system. Let me see how I'm doing time so I know how to be. Oh, we're good. Okay. I can show you the depth. We've got time. All right. Lynn, since you're there, would you mind doing this one? Okay. Just stand up where you are, and you should be okay. And basically, it's just going to colorize you based on how far you are. So walk closer to the Kinect sensor. And then if you walk further, see how she got whiter as she came forward? If she goes further back, she'll get a little bit darker. So it kind of gives you a depth map. So you can, which is very interesting to some of the kids. And what I like to do is I like to give them all of them, and you actually see what's more interest to them, what kind of items that they want to read with the sensors and what they want to do. So this year with that class, I gave them some options of what kind of programs they wanted to write. And this is, even though this is not completed, this is my best example of the students programming with the Finch, or not the Finch, my apologies, the Kinect system. And their program is called Annihilation because it was 2 of my boys. And what they were trying to do is they were trying to create a fighting game. But what they wanted to do is they wanted the Kinect sensor to read their different movements. And what they wanted to happen with those movements is then they were going to display actual pictures. So they were going to have the Kinect sensor read them, but then have their program display pictures they've taken of themselves. So let me show you the part they did not get completed because they bit off a little more than they could chew, which is okay. is they had taken pictures of themselves in different poses. And then they actually took it into paint.net and they took out the backgrounds. So they were working on, this took them a long time. I mean, they spent quite a bit of time doing their images. So they took different, and sometimes they were laying on the floor trying to get the pose with the camera, and then they manipulated it and they moved them. So this is all of the different, I mean, I could scroll down, but this is what they were doing. This was the intent. So when the Kinect sensor was going to read one of their motions, then it was going to display the appropriate picture that was going to be held in an array for each one of them. So player 1 and player 2 happened to be Ben and Tony, but it would have been player 1 and player 2. So, and these are two of my seniors that also they've taken probably every computer class I have to offer. So they had a lot of pie in the sky of what they could do in a limited amount of time, because we had done a bunch of stuff, and then they had about 3.5 weeks at the end. And so this was a little bit much for them. And of course, the senior trip happened in the middle of this assignment as well. So they couldn't program while they were in New York. So that is the intent. That is not exactly what this does, but I can show you some of what they did. Let me see if I can. Okay. Let me see if I can. You're going to get a text-based version. So the first thing they did is they wanted to see where items were, so you can change. And let's see, is this not the right version? Player, oh, there it is. You can see up in the terminal. So I kicked again. Some of the, I'm not doing the right things. I still can't play games right. They figured out that things had to be at a certain level the way they were reading it, and so they had to punch at certain levels, and I'm just continuously getting a right kick. So I don't know if I did something right.
That's why it looks like everything that you do is a kick because they were taller.
Yeah. Oh. They were. Yeah. Yeah. That's probably a good point. I'm way too small for them. So. Okay, and what happens? They get very amused with what happens when you leave the Kinect sensor. So, now at the same time, they were trying to test. Before this, one of them was trying to test how to pick up, how they would pick up movement of different things. And so this actually is it's not a full-blown, it's a test program, because Ben wanted to see what he could detect from a hand. But it still makes a pretty good example. Okay, so what he did is he's enhanced the hands, and I don't know if this is going to work. Can you see that oh, there, my right is actually my right, so it's backwards when I look at it. But when I wiggle them, I think I'm too close. When I wiggle them, he's detecting the finger movements. So he was trying to see what he could do with the hands. So this is just a sample program, but I thought it was worth at least showing some of the stuff your students can do. So. So of course he added in that he could see the images, so he could manipulate the fingers and look at what the fingers were doing. Yes.
I had a guest speaker come in from one of the universities in my area, and they were doing a database for sign language.
Oh.
And what they were doing was, instead of like looking up, they were having to try to recognize the signs and have it interpret the words, not the other way around. And part of it, they had to figure out what's a hand,
Were they
between this.
Were they using a Kinect sensor, or what were they using to? Okay, so they were using, if you didn't hear in the back, there was a professor that came in and they were trying to detect stuff with hands through the Kinect sensor, because for sign language purposes, so that it could read the symbol and then put out the words that somebody was saying. So that's a really cool idea.
It was an amazing speech.
That is. So we could take something like this in my classroom and at least see if they could get maybe some alphabet letters if it would recognize it. That's a really awesome idea. So there are lots of things your students can do with the Kinect as well. Most of them, I will tell you, at least in my experience, most of them start with one of the example programs, and they build off of those, or they pick and choose parts of it to manipulate, and that's fine with me. It depends on how you design your course and how you feel about what they do, but it's kind of a safety net for them, because this is a little bit out of their comfort zone when we start with this, and understanding how they're grabbing, you know, an image and what they're doing with that. And so I let them use the different example programs as they want. There are some other ones. There's a mirror, a trail, and an X-ray. But my example with the Finch is it's a really quick example, so it doesn't have a lot of functionality. Basically, I'm just going to be able to move the Finch forward and backwards, and that's all. But I took the paint program, and like I said, I did this in a short amount of time. So I took the paint program and basically modified it so that when you raise your hands, the Finch either moves forwards or backwards. Since Corinne was kind enough to help me set up and make sure that this was working earlier, she's already accustomed to how she has to move. All right, let's see. Are you good? And the right goes backwards, remember? Okay.
Hold on. Now I'm going
Okay.
backwards.
Go forwards. Yeah. Move it back. Right. Move your right hand. There you go. Right goes backwards, left goes forward. So that's all this does. But when I start this with this, yeah. Okay, wait. She's still drawing too. You can see. So the question is, can you draw and make it move in a nice pattern? But this is an example. The reason, thank you, Corinne. Thank you. The reason I want to use this example is because this is how easy it is to take a base program and say, what if I wanted to add the controller with it? What if I wanted to add the Finch with it? And so by showing this program and telling the kids I did this in a matter of, really it was like 15 minutes or so, that's what I say. I said, take your knowledge of one item, and what do I want to do? Okay, I want my body to control the Finch, and this is kind of what jump starts them on the concept of, like the boys were trying to do with the fighting game, is that, okay, what do I want to have happen when I write punch? Well, I want this picture to come up. And what do I want to happen when the kick happens? And I want this picture to come up. It's the same problem or concept as, what I want to do when I raise my hand, I want the Finch to go forward. What do I want to do when I raise this hand? I want the Finch to come backwards. So they start to break it down into the concept of just basically a cause and effect problem, and where in the code do those cause and effects happen. So I give them this one, I let them play with it. Of course, they modify it because immediately they're like, it doesn't stop, and it's running around the floor, and they get confused on what they're doing, and so they go in and they'll add something like, or they'll change it, or if they lift their right leg, then it stops the Finch, or something like that, which is an easy way to get them to start modifying these programs too, is you say, okay, well, yeah, the Finches are running crazy, how do you make them stop? So they can go look at Finch examples, they can look at the Kinect examples, and they can modify this program fairly easily so that they can, so they can begin to start to understand how to put these different devices together. These are a lot of fun. My class has a good time with them, but I think one of my important things with this, anytime I bring something like this into my classroom, I want to make sure they're not losing the learning process, the programming part of it, and things like that. Which is why I really like Greenfoot, because you can see the visualization of it, but you're writing code. So I think that's why that gives me the best of both worlds. I have been given my 5-minute signal, so I'm going to open it to questions now. Yes?
So these students, the only program they've seen at this point is Alice?
they have had a semester of 9 weeks of Alice and 9 weeks of Greenfoot. So that's what they've done for one semester, and then the second class they take is a full 18 weeks of just Greenfoot with this stuff.
So when you did that 9 weeks of Greenfoot, were you starting out with just a small regular Java program?
Yeah, we started out with the crab scenario, and we went from that. I use a couple of things in that class from the green room. There's a cool cat, and the cool cat plays the piano. And so there's a series of these cool cat programs in the green room, which, if you're not aware of that, it's a free resource area for teachers. You just have to have a teacher to access it. And basically, people post stuff that they can use and take off. So I go from the crab. I go into these cool cat scenarios that someone else developed because they're at the right level to keep them moving. And then I have some worksheets and things I've manipulated for those. And then they do get to a point where at the end, I let them choose in that class. They have to either do an Alice project or a Greenfoot. In that particular class, because I get a lot more who are taking that to learn just the basics, I have a higher percentage that do an Alice project because they're more comfortable at that point doing the drag and drop, but I do have a smaller percentage that do the Greenfoot. And then a lot of times those are the ones that funnel into the Programming 2 course that does all the Greenfoot. Does that sort of answer?
Yeah, this is the first time I've seen Greenfoot, which is it's really cool. But I'm getting the sense that you always start with some project and manipulate. You're not necessarily starting from scratch.
Not with the Kinect. We do start with scratch with other programs. Some of the ones I talked about earlier when I assign them programs and they start from scratch. Then after they've done that, sometimes they'll say, okay, add in the game pads. In my classes at this point, we have not started from scratch with a Kinect program.
Yeah, so these intro kits, I'm assuming they don't really need to know the full object-oriented structure of Java.
No, I talk about it at certain
But
points.
You can function,
Yeah.
you can do work in it without fully.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
Do you have curricula written up on that that you're willing to show?
I don't have specific curricular. I have my kind of the series, like the lessons I do in like kind of what order and what resources I use, because I've created some resources myself, but like I said, I've gotten quite a few of the resources from the green room. But I'd be more than happy, to share that or discuss that with kind of what order I do things in and why. Because I've played with it enough now for the past few years. I've kind of rearranged things the way it flows for me and the way I teach things. Yes?
Do the programming 1 and programming 2, programming 2 is primarily the Greenfoot with the Kinect and the game.
Yes.
When do you get straight to Java? I mean, what
I do not.
Oh, okay.
In my high school, electives are only allowed to be semester classes because of the way they schedule things. So I am not allowed to teach an AP class at this point in time. I am working on that. But because of that, I teach a lot of different semester courses. So I have a game design class that's the X and A. And then I actually do an animation class where we use Blender. So we dabble in a lot of different things. So the students who kind of take lots of those have seen many different applications, there's more the artistic side of the computing, there's the more, coding side. We do a little bit more of the coding in C# in that X and A class. But I don't go straight to Java because of just the way my classes are set up at my particular high school.
One more question on that. Have you tried the Kodu and now Netbox?
I have not done the Kodu.
Just a
Yeah.
idea for people
Yeah.
trying to decide if they want to buy that.
I just haven't, so I don't know. Yeah.
Thank you very much for all of this. Where's the green room? I was on Greenfoot trying to find it.
Okay, I can show you.
Thank you.
While we do that, Stephanie, how many hours a week do you see your students?
We run a 7-period day. So I see each kid, I see each class for about a 50-minute period every day. Okay, if you go to, when you look for Greenfoot, there's this door which kind of gives you an introduction to like all the different items, and there's the Enter the Greenfoot site. But on the bottom here is the green room. And if you click in that, I can at least show you what it looks like.
I'm sorry, when you go to the door,
Yes.
No, it's at the bottom.
It's just,
Oh, I see it,
yeah. I think I've got, if I remember my login. Yeah. And then what you can do in here, that's not really what I wanted. Under resources, there are all kinds of ways you can search. You can look for different types of games. And these are all by teachers like you and I. And there are some things that you'll see from Michael Colling. He's one of the writers. But you can see there is a textbook, and there's this is a homework assignment somebody designed for chapter 5. So there's all kinds of resources on here. You just have to be a teacher to access it. Neil, can you speak to, do they have to send an email or something to prove they're a teacher?
Yeah, when they apply at us about it, but if you have any trouble getting entry, just give me a shout, because we take care of the approvals.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
right now,
Neil Brown is one of the Greenfoot team. So yeah, if you have problems getting connected into the green room, Neil would be thrilled to help you get in. So you can search this. Other questions? Yes.
Do you consider this before AP or after AP or an extension of AP?
I don't necessarily think it could be any of those, honestly. The level I teach it at is probably pre-AP. If I had an AP course and was allowed to do that in my district, I may rethink the way I do it. But if I was teaching an AP course, if I was teaching the APA, I probably would use Greenfoot for a chunk of that course to teach some of the different concepts. If I was doing, if I was trying the APC principles course, I may do this as a unit or something like that. But I would say at the level I teach it now, it's probably pre-AP because I don't specifically address all the exact details, and they're not starting from scratch with all the code and trying to make sure they have everything.
Do you see any difference in the motivation of the students to take more elective courses, or?
I have a lot of repeat customers that take them even though they don't have to, because a lot of my students are excited about doing things like this. I do a lot of different peripherals and other type of design things in a lot of my courses because it excites them, it motivates them, but I'm still, the way in which I use them, I'm still teaching them either programming or some concept. I'm not just doing flash, something flashy without, the meat to it. So I do have success with my classes.
One more question. Sorry to bother you.
You're fine.
But when you have done this with the students, did you see any change in the attitude of the students in other subjects as well? Have you heard back from any other teachers?
I haven't heard from other teachers, but I have had students, because of some of the things we do in different classes, they've actually, I've had one student who didn't want to do a poster in another class, and I know it's not Greenfoot, but with Alice, they asked their teacher, because they had to design, I think it was in history, like how a battlefield would have looked or something, and they got permission from the teacher to design that in Alice instead, and they kind of just did it as a static, but they, I've had some different experiences like that with some of the kids, that they've used something they've done and tried to use it as their way of communicating in another course. With some of this, I basically get a lot of, I want to come see that. Are you going to show it at lunch? What are you doing? That kind of thing. I've had the principal stand in there and watch all the kids play. Normally, if I'm doing something like that, he wants to come down and watch all the Finches run around the floor. And so I get a lot of onlookers. Other questions? Yes?
I know you said something about animation. It's kind of off topic, but what was the name of the program?
It's more on the art side and the design side. I use Blender. Yes, and it's free. It's blender.org, but it's a 3D modeling software. So there is a big learning curve with it for the students, but it was just we wanted to offer something that was a little more for the artistic, that side of the brain, computer science kids, and so that's what led us to that class.
Is that entire class, or is that part
It's a
of the
semester.
multimedia?
No, it's a semester course.
And it's just Blender?
Mm-hmm.
Do you also have a multimedia course? Or
Yes.
other-
Sound editing, web design, video editing, yes, and it's a semester as well. Yep. Any other questions? Yes?
Could you just go to maybe your website real fast?
one that's not been updated, really? Oh. It's SM, and then Hoeppner is Hoeppner. And it's not there now, but give me a couple weeks, please. But I will have something under the presentations tab. Okay, so just give me a couple weeks, and I'll zip up some of this. And I probably can give you the Kinect program that my students started, but I will not probably include the photos of Ben and Tony. But I can, you can at least see how they did the, yeah. Yeah, it's spelled, it's German. It's my husband's fault. It's Hoeppner. So it's just smhoeppner.com. And my email is smhoeppner@gmail.com. So I just keep that with any of my things that I do. So.
It's really nice. Oh, this is a free website with Wendy. Is that a WordPress?
Oh, the front?
Yes.
That's a Wordle. A Wordle.
No, your layout is very nice.
Oh, Weebly. Yeah. I could have written my own, but I was like, why should I spend all that time when I'm teaching all this? Let me just use something that's out there free, and I'll just throw everything up. So I just used Weebly. It's nothing fancy, but it gets the job done for me. All right. Yes?
Are there any books or documentation that you would recommend?
There is a Greenfoot book, but if you can always get a sample from the publisher if you want to look at the Greenfoot book. It's a great resource. I'm not allowed to purchase books. I can get a classroom set if I'm lucky. So if you're in that situation, the Green Room is fabulous. They also have a discussion board, and all the time there's new people who are starting stuff, and they ask questions, and people will answer you. So the Green Room would be your best place to start, and then you could look at the Greenfoot book as an option because there are a lot of resources in there that relate to the book as well. It's just Green. Let me go back to. I think it's just Greenfoot. Here's the Introduction to Programming with Greenfoot, and that's where it is. Okay. And I am out of time because they will have another session in here. I will be happy to, once I box things up and stuff, I will be out in the foyer if you have any other further questions, or feel free to email me. Thank you.